We're going to start the legislative branch, which is Article 1. Some of this is going to be reviewed, so this shouldn't be too bad. Article 1, we're dealing with Congress, and this is our legislative branch. According to the Founding Fathers, this was the most important branch of government, and we know this for a couple of reasons. They put it first in the Constitution, and when we start comparing it to the other 6 articles of the Constitution, it's actually the longest. So they wrote more about this article than any of the other articles. We've got 3 constitutional amendments that we're going to add to your poster. So the first one is the 17th Amendment. And originally, the senators, which are 2 from each state, were to be chosen by the state legislature. So those people who were in the Indiana General Assembly, who made the laws for Indiana, they would be the ones who got to choose the 2 senators who went to Washington, D.C. The people did not pick that. A lot of people thought that this was not very democratic, that the people should have a say in the members of both the House and the Senate. So the 17th Amendment says that the people can now choose their own senators in the general election, and we just did that. 20th Amendment is also known as the lame duck amendment. We need to be very, very careful with this when you're drawing your pictures, because what it does is it changes the start date of Congress. So the president used to be inaugurated in March. Now we move that back to January. And Congress also starts in January. So we're changing the date of the presidential inauguration and moving it from March back to January. And then the 27th Amendment deals with congressional pay raises. Congress gives themselves pay raises, but they cannot get that until after they go through an election. Just some general information on Congress. Obviously, we talked about this. Article 1, review. We created a bicameral legislature made up of 2 houses. This was part of the Connecticut Compromise, where we compromised between the Virginia Plan and the New Jersey Plan. Each Congress is numbered consecutively, and so on January 3rd, 2017, it will start the 115th Congress. A term of Congress lasts for 2 years, and so that's why we number them consecutively every 2 years, is because that's how long the term lasts. House of Representatives, sometimes this is also referred to as the lower house. We know that it's based on representation, and they were originally intended to represent the people. And once again, House of Representatives was that compromise on the Virginia and the New Jersey plan, so that the larger states would be happy. So there are currently 435 members in the House of Representatives, and we'll talk about how we get that number in a minute. Each state is guaranteed to have at least 1 member. There are 7 states that have just 1 member in Congress. We know that Indiana has 9 members right now. That could change after we take a census. We live currently in the 2nd district, and once again, that could change when we do the redistricting, and we will talk about that. House members serve for 2 years. The purpose of this short term in office is to make them closer to their constituents. So make sure you put that term down, constituent. This is a person who is being represented. So when members of Congress say they need to talk to their constituents before they can vote on anything, they mean that they're going to send things home to mailers that we get in the mail and take surveys from the people that they represent in their district or in their state. So we are the constituents, and once again, House members were intended to be closer to them in terms of more reactive to what the people in their district wants. Some more information on the House. There are currently no term limits. A lot of people have suggested that we only allow them to run for a certain number of terms, but since they are not limited in the Constitution, any laws that have been created to try and limit the number of terms that a representative can serve have been ruled as unconstitutional. There are 3 constitutional requirements to be a member of the House of Representatives. You only have to be 25 years old. You have to have been a citizen of the United States for 7 years, and you also have to live in the state that you are running for office. It's not a requirement that you actually live in the district. Obviously, that would be helpful if you're running and you actually live in the area of the people that you are representing, but the Constitution just says you have to live in the state. I want to talk a little bit about reapportionment. And what reapportioning means is just we are going to redistribute the seats. So every 10 years we have what's called the decennial census, and decennial just is that time period of 10 years, where we're actually going to count everyone who lives in the United States. And we do that primarily so we can figure out, have people moved to different areas of the United States? Do we still need 9 representatives in Indiana, or have we lost population, or have other states gained so much population that we have to move those seats around? So that 435 is actually a permanent number that was set by the Reapportionment Act of 1929. It says there will be 435 members in the House of Representatives, and that every 10 years the Census Bureau will count all of the people for figuring out where we're going to shift these 435 members. And then the states are responsible for taking that number and then redrawing the lines. And so when we start looking at how the state is supposed to do this, this is a map of the state of Louisiana. And what I'm showing you here is the 4th district in yellow. It is very odd shaped, and the members of the Louisiana State Legislature did this on purpose. And we are going to spend some time, a day, if not more, looking at this process of reapportioning. But what I need for you to understand right now, until we do that additional stuff, is that Louisiana takes their map and they split up into districts. And so you have District 1 over there on the far right, below it. On the far right is District 3. Then you have 7, it looks like 6 and 5, and then 4 is that craziness that is in yellow. So like I said, states are responsible for drawing their own district lines. And what gerrymandering is, this is a term you need to know, and we will also watch some videos in class so you know where that term actually comes from. It's where the state legislature draws these districts in very odd shapes so that the party in power in that particular state either keeps more control or they can manipulate these lines so they try and keep as many seats in the House of Representatives as they possibly can. And there's a couple of ways to do this. One is to concentrate all the party in one district. So let's say they know that that's where all the Democrats or pockets of Democrats are. So they're going to draw this line very oddly so that the Democrats can take that one district, but then all the other districts are going to be carried by Republicans. So that's called packing. And the other way is to spread it so thin that the party doesn't win any seats, and that's cracking up each one of the districts. So you can pack them all in one, or you can crack all of the districts up so much that the opposite party is not going to take any one of those seats. Once again, please do not distress if you do not understand this concept, because we will be doing some more in class with this. Talking about some special duties that are specifically given to the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is responsible for impeaching the president. And what to impeach means is to formally charge with a crime. What the House is going to do is, if they want to impeach a president or a judge or some other official, the House is just going to go through all of the evidence, and they are going to determine, after looking at the evidence, is there enough evidence to have a trial? That is the end of their duty at that point. We have had 2 presidents that have been impeached. Andrew Johnson, who was the president after Lincoln was assassinated, was impeached over Reconstruction after the Civil War. And then Bill Clinton was impeached for lying under oath. Another one of their special duties is any bill that is going to tax, which are also called revenue-raising bills. they have to start in the House of Representatives. And we talked a minute ago about how the House is closer to its constituents. They serve fewer instead of serving the whole entire state. They serve a very small number in their district, and they serve for 2 years. So they are closer to their constituents. And so what the Founding Fathers decided is if we are going to take more money out of these people's wallets, then we better have the House that's closest to them, that's serving a much shorter period of time, 2 years compared to 6 years. They're going to be closer and more reactive to what the people want. So if we're going to raise their taxes, it has to start in the House of Representatives. And the same with appropriations. And these are spending bills. If we talk about appropriating something, we're talking about taking money and spending it on something. So if the government is going to tax us more or spend money, those bills have to start in the House of Representatives because they are closer to their constituents, because they serve a smaller number of people and they serve for a much shorter length of time. We're going to look just a little bit at leadership in the House of Representatives. The Speaker of the House is the most influential member in the House of Representatives. And once the House is chosen, all the members, we did this in the last election, one of the very first things that they're going to do is pick their Speaker of the House. So the majority party gets to pick the Speaker of the House. Like I said, most influential member. And the other thing is, if something were to happen to the president and the vice president at the same time, if neither one of them could serve at the same time, then the Speaker of the House is right behind them. The Speaker would move up and become President of the United States. We also have a majority leader, and I put on here they represent Republicans on the House floor, and I put that because Republicans are the majority. But if there were ever a case when the Democrats, or if the Democrats had taken over, then the majority leader would have been a Democrat. Currently, the minority leader will be a Democrat because they hold the minority. There are fewer of them than there are Republicans. And then you have whips. These are assistants to the floor leaders. Your whips, you have a majority whip and a minority whip, and their whole entire responsibility is to keep track of votes. So when there's a vote in the House, the majority leader knows who all of their members are voting for this bill or against it, the same with the majority. So this is a very important responsibility. Their goal is to get members to vote in line with whatever the party's legislative program is. We're going to look at the Senate, and that's the upper house. They have equal representation. We know that there are 2 senators from every state for a total of 10, and we also know in Article 5 that says this is something that cannot be changed. We cannot amend or take away the equal suffrage. Remember, suffrage means voting. We cannot take away the equal suffrage in the Senate. They were originally chosen by the state legislature. We've talked about that, and the 17th Amendment changed that, so now the people actually elect the senators. They serve for 6-year staggered terms, and basically what that means is only 1/3, or 33 or 34, are up for election every 2 years. So this election, we talked about, there were some states that didn't even have a senator up for election. So the Senate is supposed to be this continuous body. It's never going to change all at once. So let me add this right here. I don't think I said it a minute ago. 100% of the House of Representatives is up for election every 2 years. So this election that we just had, all 435 members were up for election. In the Senate, there were not that many. There was only 1/3 of the Senate. 2 senators from one state are never up for election at the same time. So we noticed that we only had 1. We had an empty seat, and then our other Senate seat is held by a member who hasn't served his 6 years yet, and so he won't be up for election for another 2 years. 3 constitutional requirements to be a member of the Senate. You have to be 30 years old. You have to be a citizen of the United States for 9 years, and you have to live in the state that you're running for office. Special duties of the Senate. They are the ones that hold the trial for the impeachment. So once the the House of Representatives has determined that there is enough evidence to actually have a trial, the trial itself is held in the Senate. If the president is being impeached, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court would be the presiding officer, and not the President of the Senate, because that is the Vice President. Little conflict of interest. If the President is voted out, then he would become the President of the United States. So we don't want him to be judge over a trial in which they could potentially take that position. So it is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The Senate also gets to confirm all presidential appointments. It's not the House, it's not Congress, because Congress is the House and the Senate. It is just the Senate. And then a president negotiates a treaty, but then it has to be ratified in the Senate. So if we have a treaty with another country, the president can negotiate all the terms, but then the Senate has to formally approve that. Leadership in the Senate, you have the president of the Senate. This is not the most influential member in the Senate. In the Constitution, in Article 2, it gives the Vice President 2 constitutional duties, and one of those is to be the President of the Senate. Sorry about that. And the President of the Senate is not always from the majority party. The Republicans currently have control of the Senate, and Joe Biden is currently the President of the Senate. He is a Democrat. So the only thing that he does in that chamber is to break ties. He can't debate. He can't vote any other time because he is not a member of the Senate. So the only function that he has is to break ties. You have the President Pro Tem, and this is established in Article 1 of the Constitution also. This is a temporary floor leader. The President Pro Tem, once again, is not very influential. The only reason they hold that position is because they happen to be the longest serving member in the Senate of the majority party. They're not the oldest. This is a different distinction. You can have somebody who is really old running for office for the very first time. This is someone who's been in the Senate longer than anyone else, and they happen to be from the majority party. You have the majority leader. This is very important. The majority leader is the most influential member in the Senate. Nothing happens in the Senate unless the majority leader says so. He is currently Mitch McConnell. He's a Republican and is the reason that we don't have the vacancy in the Supreme Court filled. Mitch McConnell said, we're not going to vote on it, we're not going to discuss it, we're not going to debate it. He said Barack Obama can try and fill the seat, he can pick anyone he wants to, but the Senate will not take a vote on it if Mitch McConnell, one person, says it's not going to happen. And he said it wasn't, and it didn't. The minority leader is the leader of the minority party, and I should have gone back and fixed this because the minority party now is the Democrats, so they lead the minority. And then finally the whip, and we talked about this with the House of Representatives. They assist the leaders, they keep track of the votes, they let the majority and the minority leaders know where everyone stands and tries to convince people to vote according to the party lines.